Hey Student Success, this is your video for Week 1, Chapter 2. I have already uploaded your Week 1, Chapter 1 video right here in the Week 1 videos. This is where all the videos that pertain to Week 1 will be found, including the lecture over Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and then ultimately the last video will be the one that goes over your assignments. So if I click into Week 1, again, it gives me my materials, my assignments, a breakdown of what I'm expected to do this week. Inside the materials folder, again, we already talked about Chapter 1 in the previous video, so we're going to focus on Chapter 2 in this video. There's the link to Chapter 2, it takes you directly into the Chapter 2 chapter. And then here are the other materials that go with this. In Chapter 1, I used the textbook to guide my lecture. Today, because these slideshows are a little bit shorter, I will use these to guide my lecture. So these are slideshows that have to do with the concepts in Chapter 2. And then I'll just point out kind of where to direct your attention in the textbook itself. All right, so part of Chapter 2 talks about motivation and how to stay motivated. So some of you are at the point in your semester where you are halfway through, if you're in a 16-week course. And this is sometimes where motivation starts to wane a little bit. So it's really important to have some internal and external motivation. Of course, external things like grades or career, money, those are external, but we also have to have things internal to us, pride, a sense of accomplishment, those things that are really going to keep us moving along. So what do? We have to set some goals, because if we don't know what we're working toward, then how can we get motivated? So we need to set goals. And even the act of setting goals, even if you don't complete them, can help motivate you. There was a longitudinal study done from 1972 to about 1994, and what it did is it measured students' academic goals, the degrees they wanted to reach. And so they tracked all of these students. They started with 12,000 and ended around 4,000, which is still a huge sample size. And what they found was that there was, I can't remember the exact percentages right now, but some met their goal, some exceeded their goal, and some fell short of their goal. And they were curious to see what happened to those who fell short of their goal. Actually, they were surprised to find that those people who still fell short of their goal still were motivated, still had a sense of accomplishment, did not have any long-term lingering like depression or things like that. Now, that's not to say they weren't upset that they didn't meet their goal, but just the act of setting a goal helps motivate you and helps you feel that sense of accomplishment. So you want to have some really defined goals. And to do that, our chapter talks about SMART goals. And here are some of those things that they talk about. You want to make sure that your goals are really defined. So let's say your goal is to get a good GPA. Okay, in theory, that's a nice goal to have, but it's not specific. What is good to you? Maybe a 3.2, maybe a 3.8. So make it sure it's specific. Can you measure it? Well, a GPA you can measure, right? You can track it throughout the semester. Is it realistic? Are you setting a goal that you are knowing that you can attain? You want to make sure that you challenge yourself. So if you're a really good student, setting a goal of like a 1.2, that's not realistic. You can reach that easily. If maybe you had a little bit of trouble in high school, maybe your first semester, you don't come right out of the gate saying a 4.0. You want to be like, oh, I'm going to shoot for a 3.5, because you can adjust your goal as you go. You want to be realistic, but you still want to challenge yourself. And then flexible, which is going to, adjusting. Can you adjust your goal? And that's perfectly fine. Let's say you do set a goal of a 3.8, but your anatomy and physiology class just kicks your tail. So you like, you know what, I'm going to be okay with 3.6 or whatever it is. That is fine. The point is that you're constantly reflecting and checking in with yourself. So there are different types of goals, short term, which are going to be, right now, like in this semester. Intermediate, which is maybe a little bit longer, like the next 2 semesters, like this semester, maybe summer semester. And then long term, which is, usually 2+ years away. Your big long-term goal, maybe get a degree. The intermediate and short-term goals should feed into that. So if you have a long-term goal of getting a degree, well, then your short-term and your intermediate goals should be things like, working hard to attend every class, turning in every homework assignment, studying and doing my best on the test and going for extra credit, whatever that looks like to help get you to that degree. Process goals are those things that what are you going to do to reach your goal? So for instance, if this gives the example, like if you're learning vocabulary, a process to get there would be to make vocabulary cards. If you have a goal of getting, a B on a test coming up in a class, the process would be I'm going to study my notes and study with a partner. It's like, how are you going to get to those goals? And they also need to be set at different levels. This is what I said a couple minutes ago. You want to challenge yourself, be realistic, and making sure that you're kind of pushing yourself to do your very best. Okay? The better, specific, flexible, realistic goals you have, the more motivated you'll be able to be. So how can you get motivated? Because it's very easy to get discouraged, especially, again, around this time in the semester for those of you in 16-week courses. It's a lot. And a lot of you are working and going to school and have families. And so it's tough. I get it. So what can you do? Well, you want to make sure that you break up things into small chunks. Let's say you have a paper due in a month. So day 1, when you get the assignment, you start looking at sources. Maybe day 3, you start kind of evaluating those sources, maybe doing an outline. Then you start going into more detail with that outline. You start writing a draft. Really take the large assignment and break it up into pieces. Make sure that you set goals for each session. Reward yourself. I like coffee. So sometimes if I get a lot knocked out of my to-do list, I'll be like, you know what? I'm going to go run and get myself a coffee. Or I also like Netflix. And so I might use Netflix as a reward. And then seek help. You all are here. We cannot get through a college degree without help. We just can't. Even when I was working on my doctorate, I was asking for help all the time because there are people who have done it and they know how to help you. And that's what people here at Stark State are for. There's different resources and things like that can help you really get through, because we need it to be able to just rely on those different types of tools and assistances that we might not even know are available. And that's why in the first one, I talked to you about all the different types of offices here. So seek help. Please make sure, whether it's tutoring, whether it's writing center, whatever it might be. Here's some other things and ways to be motivated. Keep a schedule, work with other people. It's really powerful to be able to bounce ideas off of people. Keep a schedule. That's really helpful. Make sure that you plan time to study, plan time to write, to read, whatever that might be. Talk nicely to yourself. Take breaks. Build yourself up, all ways to really stay motivated. Other things, if you start to kind of feign in your motivation, which happens again, try to make connections to like your big picture, like why am I doing this? Seek help, whatever that might be for you. Prioritize and reevaluate your goals. Look back and say like, hey, what am I hoping to accomplish? One of the things I like to do when I was working on my degrees, and even now as like just a working mom, I like to put Post-it notes around my house, like just little reminders that will remind me of what my goal might be, what I'm trying to accomplish. And that can really help you. Again, like keep it visible. And then keep tabs on your motivation. Really try to look to see, why are you unmotivated? What affects your motivation? Maybe there are times where you just don't do as well as you want on a test. It affects your motivation. Keep track of that. Make sure that you're addressing that as needed. Maybe troubles with kids or work, that affects your motivation for school. So just make sure you know what is impacting your motivation and try to just keep track of that and how you can adjust as needed for that. Okay. Big picture, evaluate why you're here, set goals, keep track of the goals, adjust as needed, and really just keep on top of your motivation. Remind yourself what you want your outcome to be. The next part of chapter 2 is talk about organizing your space and time. So this kind of relates because I don't know about you, but sometimes if I have like an unorganized physical space or unorganized mental space, it affects my organization. So you do need space, and we need to make sure that we're making room for ourselves both in a physical sense and a mental sense. So how can you kind of create that? Well, choose a place where you can study. If you are studying at home on your bed and you fall asleep and you wonder why, well, because you're in a comfortable place. You should be in a place that's going to kind of accommodate your academic needs. So whether that's in your home somewhere, on campus, in a library, whatever that might be, and you should be able to have access to it when you need it. You should have kind of those things around you that are going to help you, whether it's materials, your computer. Sometimes you might have to work with people in your home to say like, hey, these days and these times, I really need to study, or this space in this room is my study space. Can we just maintain it for that? And then as I talked about in the last slideshow, schedule. Make sure that you are keeping a schedule, that you are really looking at how you can work studying into your life. Because I know we all are busy, but we need to really prioritize that study time. There's a lot of research and a lot of things that talk about multitasking. For a while, it was thought that multitasking was helpful. However, a lot of places, including MIT, in the last 10 years or so, have come out and said that multitasking is actually really harmful because we are splitting our attention. It leads to lower quality work. It actually takes more time. And so single tasking is the way to really dedicate your study time. Here's some other kind of tips on your study space. Manage your time, quiet place. Sometimes you might have to say, no, I'm really bad at this. I am one of those parents where I'm not only on the PTO, I am like an officer on the PTO in 2 schools. I run pack meetings for the Cub Scouts. I am a baseball mom, all of those things. And I enjoy those things, but sometimes we have to also say no because you know what? Things come up. If you're taking classes, you have to prioritize and really look at your goals and look to see like how can you plan for distractions? Because again, if you have kids or if you have a job, you're going to be distracted. And so how can you maybe work around those distractions or anticipate those? All right. So I would recommend taking a look in chapter 2 and going a little bit more in detail. Maybe you need a lot more information on organizing your time. Maybe time is kind of something that you struggle with. There is one activity I do recommend in here. It's like a time analysis. Where does your time go? If you ever feel like at the end of the day or the end of the week, like, oh my gosh, how in the world did I lose all this time? Or where can I find more time? Well, even just doing this for a few days, this recommends a week, but even a few days, just look and see how much time are you spending on all these activities so that you can see, oh, you know what? My gosh, I spend more time going back and forth to work and school than I anticipated. That's something you can't really control, but maybe you can control how much time you are on social media, right? Or how much time you nap. I love napping. But, like looking at those things, because sometimes you don't even realize how much of your day or week is taken over by certain activities. Now, we need downtime. We need time to relax, but we also have to balance that with our goals and what we want to do. So this section in particular goes into a lot of like time management tips. And this goes again into more details. If you want to do another time analysis, I really do recommend looking at this section. I know almost every semester, I want to say a good 75% of my students say they do really struggle with time management. And part of that is because our schedule changes every semester, right? We have a work schedule that may be or maybe not consistent depending on where you work, but then every semester we get a new schedule. And so we have to like adjust every 8 or 16 weeks to a new schedule. So I just recommend looking, maybe if you struggle with goal setting, organizing your space, take a look in those sections, spend a little bit more time. All right, so that is chapter 2. My next video will start to go over the assignments that you will be expected to complete for week 1. See you then.